In the quiet, picturesque town of Willow Creek, life moved at a gentle pace. Nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, it was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names, and neighbors greeted one another with warm smiles. Among its residents was Emily Dawson, a bright 19-year-old girl who had captured the hearts of nearly everyone she met. With her golden brown hair, sparkling green eyes, and an infectious laugh that could light up even the gloomiest days, Emily stood out as someone special. Emily wasn't just beautiful on the outside, her heart matched her outward charm. She cared deeply about people, always willing to lend a hand or offer a listening ear when someone needed support. Whether it was helping her younger brother practice basketball in their driveway or baking cookies for her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, Emily's kindness left a lasting impression wherever she went. But what truly set her apart was her passion for art. From a young age, she'd been fascinated by colors, shapes, and textures. Her room was filled with sketchbooks brimming with drawings, vivid landscapes, intricate portraits, and whimsical creatures born from her imagination. Her dream was simple yet profound: to become an artist whose work would inspire others. She often spoke excitedly about attending art school after finishing high school, imagining herself surrounded by like-minded creatives who shared her love for self-expression. Her teachers praised her talent, saying she had a unique ability to bring emotions to life through her sketches. Friends admired how effortlessly she could turn ordinary moments into something extraordinary with just a pencil and paper. To Emily, art wasn't just a hobby. It was her way of connecting with the world. Despite her ambitious dreams, Emily lived a relatively normal life. She worked part-time at a local cafe to save money for art supplies, spent weekends hiking in the nearby woods with her friends, and cherished evenings curled up on the couch watching old movies with her family. Life seemed perfect, or as close to perfect as it could get. Yet, beneath the surface of this idyllic existence, there were hints of restlessness. Sometimes, late at night, Emily would stare out her bedroom window, gazing at the stars as if searching for answers to questions she couldn't quite put into words. These moments passed quickly, though, and she always returned to her cheerful self by morning. One fateful evening in early November, everything changed. The weather had turned unusually harsh, with heavy rain pelting the streets and fierce winds shaking the trees. Emily had stayed late at the cafe that day, covering a shift for a coworker who'd fallen ill. By the time she finished, darkness had settled over Willow Creek, cloaking the town in shadows. Despite the storm raging outside, Emily decided to drive home rather than call her parents. "It's just a little rain," she joked to her manager, before stepping out into the chaos. The drive should have taken no more than 15 minutes, but the conditions made it treacherous. Visibility was poor, and the roads slick with water forced Emily to slow down considerably. Still, she remained calm, humming along to her favorite songs on the radio as she navigated the winding path leading out of town. As she approached a sharp curve near the edge of the forest, however, disaster struck. A sudden gust of wind slammed against her car, causing it to swerve violently. In a split second, Emily lost control, and her vehicle veered off the road, crashing into a massive oak tree with a deafening crunch. The impact was catastrophic. Passers-by discovered the wreckage shortly afterward, calling emergency services immediately. First responders arrived within minutes, working tirelessly to free Emily from the mangled car. But despite their best efforts, it was too late. Emily Dawson, the girl with the radiant smile and boundless potential, was gone. News of the tragedy spread rapidly through Willow Creek, leaving its residents reeling. Friends gathered in stunned silence, struggling to process the loss of someone so full of life. Parents hugged their children tighter, reminded of how fragile existence could be. Even those who barely knew Emily felt the weight of her absence, as if a piece of the town's soul had been ripped away. For Emily's family, the pain was unbearable. Her mother collapsed in tears upon hearing the news, clutching one of Emily's sketchbooks to her chest as if it might somehow bring her daughter back. Her father sat in stoic silence, his face pale and drawn, unable to comprehend how his vibrant child could vanish so suddenly. Her younger brother refused to leave his room, replaying memories of their playful arguments and shared laughter in his mind. The entire Dawson household fell into a suffocating stillness, broken only by the sound of sobs echoing through empty halls. As word of the accident reached wider circles, tributes poured in from all corners of the community. Flowers piled up outside the Dawson residence, accompanied by handwritten notes expressing love and condolences. Social media feeds lit up with photos of Emily smiling brightly, captions celebrating her kindness and creativity. Local businesses displayed signs honoring her memory, while classmates organized candlelight vigils in her name. It was clear that Emily's presence had touched countless lives, leaving behind a void that no amount of words or gestures could fill. Yet amidst the sorrow, questions lingered. What had caused such a horrific accident? Was it simply bad luck, or was there something more sinister at play? Some whispered about the dangerous stretch of road where the crash occurred, known for being particularly hazardous during storms. Others speculated about mechanical failures or distractions that might have contributed to the tragedy. No definitive answers emerged, leaving the townsfolk to grapple with uncertainty alongside their grief. Little did anyone know, the events surrounding Emily's death were only the beginning of a story far stranger and more unsettling than anyone could have imagined. While the town mourned the loss of a beloved daughter, sister, and friend, whispers of something unnatural began to circulate. Rumors hinted at peculiar details surrounding the aftermath of the crash, details that defied logic and sent shivers down spines. For now, though, the focus remained on remembering Emily, the girl who brought joy to so many, and finding ways to honor her memory in the wake of unimaginable loss. The day after the devastating accident, Emily's body was transported to the local morgue for a routine examination. It was standard procedure, a necessary step before her family could begin making arrangements for her funeral. The coroner assigned to the case was Dr. Harold Grayson, a seasoned professional who had spent decades handling similar situations. He was known for his meticulous attention to detail and calm demeanor, qualities that made him well suited for such a somber role. But nothing could have prepared him or anyone else for what he was about to witness. When Dr. Grayson entered the cold, sterile room where Emily's body lay, he felt an unusual chill run down his spine. Morgues were always quiet places, devoid of life and warmth, but this time, the atmosphere seemed heavier than usual. Perhaps it was the weight of knowing how young Emily had been, or the tragic circumstances surrounding her death. Still, Dr. Grayson shook off the feeling and approached the examination table with his usual professionalism. As he pulled back the white sheet covering her face, however, his breath caught in his throat. Emily's features, once so familiar and full of vitality, had undergone a shocking transformation. Her once smooth skin now appeared uneven and distorted, as though it had shifted slightly out of place. Her eyes, which had sparkled with kindness just days earlier, seemed sunken and hollow, staring blankly at the ceiling. Most unsettling of all was her mouth, which had twisted into an expression that looked almost unnatural. It wasn't quite a frown, nor was it a smile. It was something in between, an eerie contortion that sent shivers through even the most hardened observer. Dr. Grayson froze, his mind racing to make sense of what he was seeing. He double-checked the identification tag attached to the gurney, confirming that this was indeed Emily Dawson. There was no mistake. The body before him belonged to the same girl whose vibrant personality had touched so many lives. Yet, the face, staring back at him, bore little resemblance to the Emily everyone knew. His first thought was that some sort of post-mortem phenomenon might explain the changes, a rare reaction to trauma or decomposition. But none of the scientific explanations aligned with what he observed. The alterations weren't consistent with any natural process he'd encountered in his career. Compelled to investigate further, Dr. Grayson carefully examined the rest of Emily's body for signs of injury or tampering. Aside from the injuries sustained in the crash, there were no external marks or indications that someone had interfered with her remains. No tools or instruments had been used to alter her appearance, nor was there evidence of chemicals or substances that might have caused such drastic changes. Everything pointed to the fact that these transformations had occurred internally, without any outside influence. It was as if Emily's very essence, her soul perhaps, had somehow warped her physical form. Word of the bizarre discovery spread quickly among the hospital staff. Nurses whispered nervously in corridors, sharing hushed accounts of what they'd heard. Some claimed that Dr. Grayson had refused to speak about the details, muttering only vague phrases like unexplainable and beyond comprehension. Others swore they saw him pacing outside the morgue late at night, deep in thought as if wrestling with a moral dilemma. One nurse, brave enough to peek inside the examination room, reported feeling an overwhelming sense of unease when she looked at Emily's altered face. She described it as haunting, saying it gave her nightmares for days afterward. Speculation ran rampant throughout the facility. Some suggested that Emily's spirit might still be lingering, unable to move on, due to the suddenness of her death. Others proposed more sinister theories hinting at curses or supernatural forces at play. A few dismissed the entire situation as mere hysteria, attributing the strange occurrences to overactive imaginations and grief-induced paranoia. Regardless of individual beliefs, one thing was certain: something extraordinary had happened to Emily Dawson, and no one could provide a logical explanation. Meanwhile, Emily's family remained unaware of the developments. They were consumed by their own grief, struggling to come to terms with the loss of their beloved daughter. Arrangements for the funeral were underway, with plans to hold a viewing before the burial. Friends and relatives volunteered to help, bringing food to the Dawson household and offering words of comfort. Despite their efforts, the air of sorrow hung thick over the home, a constant reminder of the void Emily's absence had created. As preparations continued, the hospital administration debated whether to inform the Dawsons about the peculiar condition of Emily's body. On one hand, withholding information felt unethical, especially given the family's right to know. On the other hand, revealing such disturbing details risked inflicting additional pain during an already unbearable time. After much deliberation, they decided to proceed cautiously, instructing Dr. Grayson to monitor the situation closely and report any further anomalies. Back in the morgue, Dr. Grayson found himself unable to shake the image of Emily's altered face from his mind. He replayed the events leading up to the discovery repeatedly, searching for clues he might have missed. Was it possible that stress or fatigue had clouded his judgment? Could the lighting in the room have created an optical illusion? Try as he might, he couldn't dismiss the reality of what he'd seen. Something inexplicable had occurred, and it defied every ounce of medical knowledge he possessed. Late that evening, alone in the dimly lit morgue, Dr. Grayson decided to take one final look at Emily's body. As he approached the table, he noticed something that made his heart race. Her expression, previously frozen in that unsettling half-smile, had shifted ever so slightly. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. Her lips now curled, upward in what appeared to be a faint grin, as though amused by some private joke. For a moment, Dr. Grayson entertained the absurd notion that Emily was mocking him, taunting him for his inability to understand what was happening. Shaken, but determined to maintain composure, he documented the change meticulously, snapping photographs and jotting notes in his journal. He knew that presenting this evidence to colleagues would likely elicit skepticism, if not outright disbelief. Nevertheless, he couldn't ignore the mounting evidence pointing to something beyond the realm of science. Whatever force had altered, Emily's appearance was real, and it showed no signs of stopping. By the time morning arrived, news of the latest development had reached the ears of hospital administrators. Concerned about potential fallout, they convened an emergency meeting to discuss next steps. Should they delay the funeral until further investigations could be conducted? Or should they proceed as planned, hoping that whatever was happening would resolve itself? Ultimately, they opted for the latter, fearing that postponing the service would only add to the family's anguish. What they didn't realize, however, was that the decision would set off a chain of events far stranger and more harrowing than anyone could have anticipated. As the hours ticked by, anticipation built within the community. Flyers advertising the upcoming funeral circulated widely, urging friends and neighbors to pay their respects. Candles flickered in windows across Willow Creek, symbolizing hope and remembrance. Yet beneath the surface of collective mourning, whispers of unease continued to spread. People exchanged wary glances, their minds filled with questions they dared not voice aloud. What exactly had happened to Emily Dawson, and why did it feel like her story was far from over? The day of Emily Dawson's funeral arrived, casting a somber shadow over Willow Creek. The small town had never experienced such collective grief. The loss of someone so young and full of life felt like an unfathomable wound that refused to heal. Friends, family members, teachers, and neighbors gathered at St. Mary's Church, where the service was set to take place. The weather mirrored the mood. Gray clouds hung low in the sky, threatening rain, as if nature itself mourned alongside them. Inside the church, rows of wooden pews filled quickly with solemn faces. Bouquets of white lilies lined the altar, their sweet fragrance mingling with the faint scent of incense. A large portrait of Emily stood propped on an easel near the front, a smiling photo taken just months earlier during a summer picnic. Her bright eyes seemed to gaze out at the congregation, offering comfort even in death. But despite the warmth captured in the image, there was an undeniable tension in the air. Whispers echoed through the crowd, hushed conversations about the mysterious changes to Emily's appearance after her passing. No one dared say it aloud, but everyone wondered what they would see when the casket was opened for the viewing. Finally, the moment came. With trembling hands, Emily's father stepped forward to unveil his daughter one last time. The room fell, silent as he carefully lifted the lid of the polished mahogany coffin. For a split second, all eyes were drawn to the figure lying within. Then chaos erupted. Gasps rippled through the congregation as people took in the sight before them. Emily's face, once so familiar and radiant, had transformed into something unrecognizable. Her skin appeared stretched unnaturally tight across her cheekbones, giving her features a gaunt, almost skeletal quality. Her lips, slightly parted, curved into an expression that wasn't peaceful or serene. It looked twisted, almost malevolent. Some attendees recoiled instinctively, clutching their chests or covering their mouths in horror. Others leaned closer, straining to reconcile the stranger in the casket with the girl they remembered. "What happened to her?" someone whispered, breaking the stunned silence. The question hung unanswered in the air, heavy with dread. Emily's mother collapsed onto the floor, overcome by shock and despair. Her anguished cries pierced the stillness, echoing off the stone walls of the church. "That's not my baby," she wailed, reaching toward the casket as if trying to pull Emily back from whatever dark force had claimed her. Friends rushed to her side, wrapping their arms around her shaking frame, but nothing could console her. Her husband stood frozen, beside the coffin, his face pale and expressionless, unable to process the grotesque spectacle before him. As the commotion grew louder, several mourners began to notice something even more unsettling. Those who dared approach the casket claimed that Emily's features seemed to shift subtly the closer they got, as though her face was alive, responding to their presence. One woman swore she saw Emily's eyelids flutter ever so slightly, while another insisted the corners of her mouth twitched upward into a faint smirk. These accounts sent ripples of fear through the crowd, prompting some to step back cautiously, unwilling to look directly at her. The priest attempted to restore order, raising his voice to calm the distraught assembly. "Please let us focus on remembering Emily for who she was," he urged, his tone equal parts firm and compassionate. "She deserves our love and prayers today." But his words did little to ease the mounting hysteria. People began filing out of the church in droves, too shaken to stay. Some crossed themselves repeatedly as they exited, muttering prayers under their breath. Others simply fled, unable to bear the weight of what they had witnessed. By the time the service concluded, only a handful of brave souls remained inside. Among them were Emily's closest friends, Sarah, Mia, and Jake, who refused to abandon her, no matter how unsettling the circumstances. They sat together in the front pew, holding hands tightly as tears streamed down their faces. None of them spoke. There were no words adequate enough to capture the magnitude of their grief or the terror clawing at their hearts. Outside, the atmosphere was equally charged. Groups of people huddled together in the parking lot, exchanging theories and speculations, about what had caused Emily's appearance to change so drastically. Some suggested it might be a medical anomaly, a rare reaction to trauma or decomposition. Others pointed to local legends, recounting tales of spirits who lingered after violent deaths, unable to find peace. A few dismissed the entire ordeal as mass hysteria, arguing that grief and exhaustion had clouded everyone's judgment. Yet no explanation could fully account for the eerie details, the shifting expressions, the unnatural distortion of her features. News of the bizarre events at the funeral spread rapidly throughout Willow Creek. By evening, nearly every household had heard about the chaos that unfolded at St. Mary's Church. Social media buzzed with posts and comments, each one more incredulous than the last. Photos of the floral arrangements and the portrait of Emily circulated online, accompanied by captions expressing disbelief and sorrow. Some users shared screenshots of old pictures of Emily, contrasting her vibrant smile with descriptions of the haunting visage now lying in her coffin. The story became a topic of heated discussion, drawing reactions ranging from sympathy to outright fear. For Emily's family, the fallout was devastating. Her parents retreated into isolation, refusing to answer phone calls or open their door to visitors. Their home, once filled with laughter and warmth, now stood eerily quiet, its windows darkened against the world outside. Neighbors left casseroles and handwritten notes on their doorstep, but the gestures went largely unnoticed. Grief had consumed them entirely, leaving little room for anything else. Meanwhile, Sarah, Mia, and Jake struggled to make sense of what they had seen. The three friends met later that night at Sarah's house, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor surrounded by flickering candles. They clung to one another, seeking solace in shared memories of Emily. Do you think she's still here?" Mia asked hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper. The question hung in the air, unanswered yet impossible to ignore. Jake shook his head firmly, though his eyes betrayed his uncertainty. "There's got to be a logical explanation," he said, more to reassure himself than anyone else. "Maybe it's some kind of chemical reaction or something. Bodies can do weird stuff after they die." Sarah nodded slowly, but doubt lingered in her expression. "I don't know," she admitted. "It didn't feel normal. It felt like she was trying to tell us something." The conversation tapered off, leaving the trio lost in their own thoughts. Each of them replayed the events of the funeral in their minds, searching for answers that eluded them. Had Emily's spirit somehow manifested in her altered form? Was she trapped between worlds, unable to move on? Or was this merely the result of overactive imaginations fueled by grief? Whatever the truth, one thing was certain. Emily's death, and the inexplicable changes that followed, had left an indelible mark on their lives. As the night wore on, the streets of Willow Creek grew quiet, save for the occasional sound of wind rustling through trees. Inside homes, families locked their doors and drew their curtains, uneasy about the darkness beyond their windows. Conversations turned to whispers, and whispers gave way to silence. Fear had taken root in the town, spreading like tendrils through every corner. And at the center of it all lay Emily Dawson, a girl whose life had been cut tragically short, and whose memory now loomed larger than ever, shrouded in mystery and unease. In the days following Emily Dawson's chaotic funeral, an eerie calm settled over Willow Creek, but it was the kind of quiet that came before a storm. The town had always been peaceful, its residents accustomed to predictable routines and familiar faces. Now, however, a palpable sense of unease lingered in the air, as if something unseen lurked just beyond the edges of perception. For those closest to Emily, this feeling wasn't abstract or distant. It was real, tangible, and growing stronger with each passing day. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Sarah, Emily's best friend since childhood, was the first to notice. Late one night, as she lay in bed scrolling through old photos on her phone, she heard it. A faint whisper, so soft it could have been mistaken for the wind outside her window. At first, she dismissed it, chalking it up to exhaustion and stress. But then it happened again. This time the voice was clearer, unmistakably calling her name. "Sarah," it murmured, low and raspy, yet somehow eerily familiar. Her heart pounded as she sat upright, scanning the darkened room for any sign of movement. Nothing stirred. The house was silent except for the steady ticking of the clock on her bedside table. Still, the sensation of being watched prickled at the back of her neck. The whispers didn't stop there. Over the next few nights they grew more frequent, sometimes accompanied by strange noises, footsteps creaking down empty hallways, doors clicking shut without explanation, and the faint rustling of fabric as though someone were brushing past her. Each incident left Sarah shaken, unable to sleep until dawn broke and sunlight chased away the shadows. She tried convincing herself it was all in her head, a side effect of grief and trauma. Yet deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that these occurrences were connected to Emily, that somehow her friend was reaching out from beyond the grave. Mia, another of Emily's closest friends, experienced disturbances of her own. Unlike Sarah, who lived alone, Mia shared a small apartment with her older sister. One morning, while getting ready for work, she noticed something odd about her belongings. Her favorite necklace, which she was certain she'd left on her dresser, the night before, now hung neatly around the mirror frame. A stack of books she'd placed on her desk had been rearranged into a perfect pyramid. Most unsettling of all were the sketches scattered across her coffee table, drawings done in a style unmistakably similar to Emily's. They depicted twisted, surreal scenes, shadowy figures lurking in forests, distorted faces peering out from mirrors and eyes watching from every corner. None of them bore any resemblance to Emily's usual bright and hopeful artwork. Instead, they radiated a chilling sense of foreboding. When Mia confronted her sister about the changes, the response only added to her confusion. "I didn't touch anything," her sibling insisted, looking genuinely puzzled. "And I definitely didn't draw those." Mia felt a cold shiver run down her spine as she realized what this meant. Someone, or something, had entered her home while she slept, leaving behind cryptic messages meant solely for her. Jake, the third member of their tight-knit group, wasn't spared either. Though he prided himself on being practical and level-headed, even he couldn't deny the strange events unfolding around him. His car keys went missing multiple times only to reappear hours later in places he swore he'd already checked. Electronics acted up unpredictably. His phone would turn on and off by itself, playing random songs at full volume, while his television flickered between channels showing static-filled images of trees and roads eerily reminiscent of the crash site. On one particularly unnerving evening, Jake woke up to find his bedroom door wide open, despite having locked it before going to bed. Standing in the doorway was a figure cloaked in darkness, its shape shifting and indistinct. Before he could react, it vanished, leaving behind a faint scent of earth and rain. For Emily's parents, the haunting took on a different form. Their once cozy home became a labyrinth of inexplicable phenomena. Lights flickered constantly, no matter how many times they replaced bulbs or checked wiring. Cold spots appeared randomly throughout the house, freezing patches of air that seemed to follow them from room to room. Doors slammed shut violently, startling them out of their seats during quiet moments. And then there were the dreams, vivid, recurring nightmares in which Emily appeared, her face contorted in anguish as she reached out to them pleading for help. When they woke, tears streaming down their cheeks, they found objects moved slightly out of place, as though the dream had bled into reality. Word of these bizarre happenings spread quickly among the townsfolk, fueling speculation and fear. Some believed the disturbances were proof of supernatural activity, evidence that Emily's spirit hadn't crossed over. Others argued it was mere coincidence, a series of unrelated quirks amplified by collective grief. A few whispered about darker possibilities, recalling old legends tied to Willow Creek, a place rumored to be cursed long before modern development brought roads and homes to its hills. Regardless of personal beliefs, everyone agreed on one thing: something strange and unsettling was happening, and it all traced back to Emily Dawson. As the days turned into weeks, the incidents escalated. Sarah began hearing not just whispers, but entire sentences spoken in Emily's voice, fragmented phrases like "help me" and "find me." One night she woke to find her curtains billowing inward even though her window was closed. In the reflection of her mirror, she caught a glimpse of a figure standing behind her, a girl with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. It vanished the moment she blinked, leaving her breathless and trembling. Mia discovered new drawings appearing daily, each more disturbing than the last. One depicted a road curving into dense woods, with a single car veering off into darkness. Another showed a faceless entity hovering above a crumpled body, its form shimmering like smoke. Beneath each sketch were scrawled words written in shaky handwriting. "Remember me. Don't forget. You know the truth." The messages sent chills through her, forcing her to confront memories she'd rather bury. Jake, meanwhile, found himself drawn inexplicably to the crash site. Against his better judgment, he visited the spot late one afternoon, parking his car along the shoulder and stepping out into the crisp autumn air. The tree where Emily's vehicle had collided loomed ahead, its bark scarred and splintered from the impact. As he approached, a sudden gust of wind swept through the forest, carrying with it the faint sound of laughter. The same laugh he remembered from countless afternoons spent with Emily. He spun around, searching for the source, but saw nothing except the endless expanse of trees stretching into twilight. Still, the feeling of her presence lingered, wrapping around him like a ghostly embrace. Back in town, life continued as best it could under the weight of these unexplained events. People avoided talking about them openly, afraid of inviting further trouble. Yet privately, many wondered if Emily's death had awakened something ancient and malevolent, something that refused to let her go. Whispers of curses and restless spirits mingled with prayers and candlelight vigils, creating a tapestry of hope and dread woven tightly together. Through it all, Sarah, Mia, and Jake remained bound by their shared experiences. They met regularly, comparing notes and trying to piece together the fragments of a puzzle far larger than any of them understood. Despite their fear, they couldn't ignore the possibility that Emily was reaching out, not to harm them, but to communicate something vital, something unfinished. And so, as the town of Willow Creek braced itself for whatever might come next, the three friends resolved to dig deeper. If answers existed, they would find them, even if it meant confronting forces beyond their comprehension. Because one thing was clear, Emily's story wasn't over. Not yet. Desperation began to take hold in Willow Creek as the strange occurrences surrounding Emily Dawson's death showed no signs of stopping. For Sarah, Mia, and Jake, the trio closest to Emily, the haunting had become an unbearable weight pressing down on their lives. Sleepless nights, constant unease, and the gnawing feeling that they were being watched plagued them endlessly. They knew they couldn't face this alone anymore. Something bigger was at play, something none of them could explain or fight off by themselves. It was time to seek help. After much deliberation, they decided to contact a team of paranormal investigators. They'd heard of such groups before, people who specialized in uncovering the truth behind unexplainable phenomena, but never imagined they'd need one themselves. A quick online search led them to Eclipse Investigations, a small but reputable group based 2 towns over. Known for their thorough approach and use of advanced technology, Eclipse Investigations promised answers where others found only fear. With trembling hands, Sarah made the call, explaining their situation. In halting sentences, the investigator on the other end listened patiently, asking thoughtful questions before agreeing to visit Willow Creek within the week. When the team arrived, they brought with them an array of equipment designed to detect even the slightest hint of supernatural activity. Infrared cameras, electromagnetic field detectors, audio recorders, and thermal imaging devices. Their leader, a calm and methodical woman named Claire Bennett, introduced herself and her crew, a mix of tech experts, historians, and spiritual advisors. She assured Emily's friends and family that they would do everything in their power to uncover the source of the disturbances. But as she spoke, her eyes betrayed a flicker of intrigue. This case felt different from others they'd worked on before. The investigation began at the Dawson household, the epicenter of the strange events. Claire instructed everyone to leave the house temporarily so her team could set up their gear without distractions. As they worked, the air inside seemed heavy, almost oppressive, making it difficult to breathe. One of the technicians noted unusually high electromagnetic readings throughout the home, particularly concentrated near Emily's old bedroom. "This level of activity is rare," he muttered, adjusting his device. "It's like something's amplifying itself here." Once the equipment was in place, the team conducted their first sweep. Thermal cameras revealed patches of cold air hovering inexplicably in corners, while motion sensors picked up faint movements where no one stood. Audio recorders captured faint whispers layered beneath the hum of electronics, voices too distorted to decipher but unmistakably present. When Claire reviewed the footage later, she noticed shadowy figures darting across frames, shapes that shouldn't have been there. Her expression darkened as she realized the scope of what they were dealing with. That evening, the team held a meeting with Sarah, Mia, Jake, and Emily's parents to discuss their findings so far. The atmosphere in the room was tense, charged, with a mixture of hope and dread. Claire began by summarizing the evidence: the electromagnetic spikes, the temperature fluctuations, the auditory anomalies. Then she paused, choosing her words carefully. "What we're seeing here isn't typical residual energy," she explained. "This feels intentional, like whatever or whoever is causing these disturbances has a purpose, and it seems tied directly to Emily." At those words, Emily's mother broke down, sobbing into her husband's shoulder. "Why won't she leave us alone?" she cried, her voice raw with anguish. "Haven't we suffered enough?" Claire leaned forward, her tone gentle but firm. "I don't think she's trying to hurt you," she said. "Based on what we've observed, I believe she's trying to communicate. The question is why? What does she want us to know?" Encouraged by Claire's insights, Sarah finally mustered the courage to share something she'd kept hidden until now. "There's something I haven't told anyone," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. All eyes turned to her as she continued. "Before the accident, Emily confided in me about some weird stuff she'd been experiencing. She said she kept having nightmares, really vivid ones, about a faceless figure watching her. It would whisper threats, telling her to change or give in. At the time, I thought it was just stress or imagination, but now..." Her voice trailed off, tears welling in her eyes. "Now I'm not so sure." The room fell silent as the weight of her revelation sank in. Claire nodded slowly, jotting notes in her journal. "That changes things," she said. "If Emily sensed something malevolent before her death, it could mean she wasn't targeted randomly. Whatever this entity is, it may have been influencing her long before the crash." To gather more information, the team expanded their investigation beyond the Dawson home. They visited the crash site, setting up cameras and recording devices along the stretch of road where Emily's car had veered off. The forest surrounding the area exuded an eerie stillness, as if nature itself refused to intrude. As night fell, the investigators captured chilling audio clips, faint laughter echoing through the trees, footsteps crunching gravel despite no one being nearby, and a low guttural growl that sent shivers down their spines. One technician claimed to see a pair of glowing eyes staring back at him from the darkness, vanishing when he blinked. Back in town, the team delved into local history, searching for clues that might shed light on the entity haunting Willow Creek. What they uncovered was both fascinating and alarming. According to old records and folklore passed down through generations, the area had once been sacred ground to the indigenous tribes who lived there centuries ago. Legends spoke of a vengeful spirit known as the Faceless Warden, a guardian, corrupted by jealousy and rage after humans desecrated its domain. Tales described it as a shapeshifter, able to alter its form and manipulate emotions to instill fear and obedience. Over time, settlers reported encounters with the entity, claiming it preyed on those who dared dream too boldly or challenge societal norms. Could Emily have inadvertently crossed paths with this ancient force? Claire posed the theory during another meeting, pointing out parallels between the legend and Emily's experiences. "Think about it," she said. "Emily was creative, ambitious, and full of life. She wanted to pursue art, to express herself freely. That kind of passion might have drawn the attention of something like the Faceless Warden, especially if it saw her dreams as a threat. The idea sent chills through everyone present. If true, it meant Emily's death wasn't an accident, but part of a larger, darker narrative. Her altered appearance, the haunting messages, the relentless disturbances, all pointed to a battle between her spirit and the malevolent force that had claimed her. But why did it continue targeting her loved ones? Was it seeking revenge, closure, or something else entirely? As the investigation progressed, Claire suggested conducting a séance, a risky but potentially illuminating step toward contacting Emily directly. Though hesitant at first, Sarah, Mia, and Jake agreed, desperate for answers. They gathered in Emily's childhood bedroom, candles casting flickering shadows across the walls. Claire led the ritual, guiding them through calming exercises to open their minds while her assistant monitored the room with sensitive equipment. At first, nothing happened. The silence stretched on, broken only by the soft crackle of candle flames. Then, abruptly, the temperature plummeted. Frost formed on the windows and the air grew thick with static electricity. A low moan filled the space, growing louder until it became a piercing wail. Everyone froze, hearts pounding as the sound coalesced into a single word. Help. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she called out, "Emily? Is that you? Please, tell us what you need." For a moment there was only silence. Then faintly a voice responded. Not Emily's cheerful tone, but something hollow and strained. "Trapped," it whispered. "Won't let me go." Claire urged them to stay calm, asking probing questions. Bit by bit, fragments of Emily's story emerged. She revealed that the crash hadn't been an accident. The entity had forced her off the road. Afterward, it trapped her spirit, twisting her features and using her to torment those she loved. Her cries for help weren't just pleas for freedom. They were warnings. The Faceless Warden remained active, feeding on fear and grief, and wouldn't stop until it consumed everything in its path. The séance ended abruptly when the candles extinguished themselves, plunging the room into darkness. Shaken but resolute, the team vowed to find a way to free Emily's spirit and banish the entity once and for all. For the first time since her death, Sarah, Mia, and Jake felt a glimmer of hope. Though the road ahead was uncertain, they knew one thing for sure: Emily wasn't gone. She was fighting, and they would fight alongside her no matter the cost.